I want to welcome everyone to our Leader Discussions live session of virtual events. Today we've got Kris Kotzer of Allnorth with us today, and we're going to talk about company culture. Before we get started, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Garinger. I am the Director of Corporate Solutions for Thoughtexchange. My job here is to lead the corporate sales team, ensure that all of our corporate partners are utilizing Thoughtexchange in a way that helps them tap into the human intelligence that's available to them in their employees and their customers. So that's a little bit about me. I want to remind you guys though, before we get started, that if you want to join the conversation on social media, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, please don't hesitate to utilize our Thoughtexchange virtual events hashtag. So that's hashtag TE virtual events. So post all you want, use this hashtag, and we can help join the conversation after the event. So now I want to introduce you to Kris Kotzer. Kris joined Allnorth in 2012 to assist the company, the human resources team, with the company's rapid growth in the prairies. He quickly moved into leadership positions, and now he heads Allnorth's People Development Department with a focus on the team's growth and development. So welcome, Kris. We're happy to have you.
Glad to be here.
We got to know you a little bit professionally, and now one of the things I like to do is help our attendees get to know you a little bit personally. So you are considered one of our 5-star leaders, and if you're familiar with Thoughtexchange, you know that our rating scale of course has 5 stars. So we like to ask our 5-star leaders 5-star questions. It's a series of 5 questions in quick succession. So this helps us get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready, Kris?
I am now.
Okay, here we go. Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Okay. Road trips or air travel?
Road trips.
In-person meetings or virtual meetings?
In person.
Salty snacks or sweet tooth?
Salt.
Twitter or Instagram?
Ooh, I'm getting old, so barely either. We'll go Twitter.
Okay, good. All right. See, that was painless, but now we know you a little bit better, which I think is good. So now that we know you, we have kind of a 3-dimensional view of who Kris is. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who Allnorth is, what you guys do, what you're all about?
Sure. Yeah. So Allnorth, the 30-second elevator pitch is we're a technical services and engineering firm. We were started in Prince George. I've been in business for many years now. Our CEO, Darby, has been leading the organization with one very clear path in mind, and that's to develop the team, to grow the company so that his team members have an ever-increasing future for themselves. We're here to delight the customer, and those customers are everywhere from pulp and paper clients to infrastructure, oil and gas, and mining, in order to help develop and build something. We like to build, we like to make things happen. So I've come here because it's a great place to see what you want to build actually come to fruition. It's a great spot for that.
Yeah, that's really great. I really like the parallel there, because you as a company, you're building things, and then you as a leadership team, you're also building up your employees. So I think that that's a lovely connection. So thanks for pointing that out.
It's actually one of the core things that I hope we talk a little bit about more today, and you'll find out from Allnorth, is that you don't get you don't get a business that grows, you don't get a client base that grows without the people. It's inextricably linked.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like you guys have been so successful, because you guys as a leadership team, you really get that. So let's talk about that. I want to dive into that a little bit. Can you kind of tell us historically how you guys have gauged employee engagement or your culture, give you, a pulse on the culture of the company?
Yeah, for sure. We've got a really good setup here, I would say, in that twice a year we have a team sat, so a team engagement survey. So we use that. It's a fairly traditional method, but we do it twice a year for a couple of reasons. Our workflow has a high point in the summertime and the fall, which is the construction season, and more of a, I don't want to call it a low point, but more of a steady state typically that's in the springtime. What we want to do is gauge people's happiness at both that fall time as well as the springtime. So we do it twice a year. We've been doing it for many years. My predecessor who was here set up a really good structure then. We started it back in 2009, I believe. So it's been going for a long time. A lot of good data points. I'm proud to say that of the results that come through that, we scored quite high. When I take a look at some of our competitors and other people in other industries, our engagement scores are quite high. A couple years ago, we started using employee or team net promoter scores. And again, we're always right in the range of what a good to great organization would score.
That's great. So talk to me a little bit about how Thoughtexchange has helped you supplement those survey practices.
Yeah, Thoughtexchange it's an interesting one. So we've been utilizing Thoughtexchange platforms for, let's say, 4 years now. We were some of the first people trying it out, and we tried it out just first of all to gain some insight as to what people want when we were off to a leadership meeting. And then we tried it out with a smaller group as to, how did this meeting go? A couple years ago, we asked, what's actually really important to you as team members across the business. Most recently, we have a quarterly face-to-face or town hall meeting that Darby, our CEO, leads. Every time we have a meeting, we ask for, give us some questions, challenge us, throw the hard stuff out there, give us some feedback. Let's talk through what's actually on your mind. And because you've got 400 people on a phone call, not a lot of hands go up. Some people, look around the room and think, "Oh, can't say that in front of my boss, and he's sitting right next to me." And some people think, "Well, what if it sounds silly?" So one thing that we did was working with the team at Thoughtexchange, threw out a really simple question before we went into the meeting. Tell us what you'd like to hear about at the meeting.
That's great. Nice and vague and open. And I think that, I'd love to know, I think you're right though. I want to really kind of double click on that. The social constraints or hierarchical constraints that happen in a boardroom setting like that are certainly alive and real, even if you have a lovely culture in your company. There are things that people need to feel safe expressing, and a lot of times that just doesn't exist. So I really appreciate that you guys recognize that as a leadership team.
Yeah, we'd like to think that we're very approachable. We'd like to think that you can say anything to me that you could say to anybody else in the organization. We'd like to think that people feel as comfortable with me as they do with their grandma. But the reality is, it might not be true. There just is there's an inherent hierarchical, as you mentioned. There's an inherent belief that, that guy's in management. You got to be careful what you say to him or else.
Right. So talk to me a little bit, Kris, then about what you guys found out when you asked this broad question for these quarterly meetings, because there's a couple of things here at play that I want to dive into with you. One, you're able to engage people over a huge, workforce. One of the things that you guys deal with is that you have a dispersed workforce. You don't have people always in the office. And I think that still having high engagement scores is really commendable, because in those meetings, if you aren't really physically present, it can sometimes feel like you're away. And so I want to hear about how Thoughtexchange has impacted that. And then the second thing I'd love to dive into is, how did your management team feel when you asked this broad question, knowing that really anything could come up once they got in there?
Yeah, no, good questions. Let's start with one. You're right. We are a dispersed workforce. We've got 14 offices, ranging anywhere from 3 people to 80 people in that office. So that makes a difference in how dispersed we are. Beyond the 14 offices, we've actually also got many of our staff. I would say, rough idea, a third of our staff that sometimes don't actually even go into an office. They might go in for orientation. They might go in for a burger and a beer wrap up of the season. They might go in for a Christmas party, but they're working on project sites. So using a tool like Thoughtexchange actually works really nicely because you throw a question out there, you're able to get feedback back from people who you don't see every day. So that's quite positive. How did it go? The question?
Well, not just that, but how did your management team feel when you said, we're going to just open this up? Let's just open it up. Because I think also in the same ways that the employees feel uncomfortable or unsafe sometimes asking the questions, managers also feel a certain safety in not being caught off guard. So talk to me a little bit how you mitigated that.
Yeah, we were caught off guard, and there were a lot of people who were like, what are you doing? This is not controlled. This is not a very good idea. As I said, we're an engineering and technical services firm. I have a lot of very technical people who work in our organization. And being outside a comfort zone isn't something that we like to, that we actually feel good about here all the time. So I had quite a few people on the management team, quite a few people who weren't in the management team as soon as the question came out saying, are you sure? Like, what happened? Or did you fall on your head? This is going to be dangerous. Like, what happens if somebody says something bad? What are you going to do about that? Everybody else will be able to see the comments. Can you imagine what that would do? It would cause mass hysteria. There would be rioting in the streets. You have to be very careful. You shouldn't do this. So I had more than 24 of those phone calls. But you know what? I have to keep going back to, this is something that Darby and I talked about quite a few times over the last little while, just not knowing and being sure how to get it out there. But if we don't hear, then we won't know. So we have to be comfortable with hearing some of the good and some of the bad at the same time. And guess what? If the rest of our team can see the bad as well, that's okay. Because guess what? If they're thinking it, now they know they're not the only ones thinking it. So we can really figure out what's going on and really help and move things forward.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really important. I want to just kind of double down on that these conversations are happening either in someone's head or with other employees. And so getting in front of that conversation, I think is such a huge advantage for a leadership team, because then they can address it head on if there is something bad. But I think also one of the great things about Thoughtexchange platforms is it also allows them to see the good. The bad just doesn't sit there together, you know? And I really commend you guys, because it takes some active, courageous leadership to go, that's okay, we're ready for this, we're ready to face it, and we're ready to not just face it, but really get in front of it. And so talk to me a little bit about how the quarterly meeting went once you guys did open up this question.
Yeah, so it went really well. So we put the question out about 3 weeks previous, left it open for 10 days, got a lot of feedback. We got 131 unique comments that came back, or questions, ranging everything from, are we going to get raises this year, to, what's going on in the economy? What more can I do to help the organization grow? To we've had a lot of turnover. What the heck is going on here? That one was quite interesting because it came through synonymously. It came through from a lot of different locations, and it came through where I wasn't really expecting that to come through, because I know every one of the people who work in this organization. I know everyone who leaves. I know why they leave. I know why they come. But it wasn't an upward trend of a significant amount, but our team members really felt that it was. So to be honest, that question, multiple questions around turnover, about what are we doing to retain our staff, to questions about, what are we doing to scare them off? Like, what the heck? That became quite a major topic of conversation there. So that was a bit of a surprise to me, because like I said, I was watching the trends and they were flowing along, went up a little bit, but I didn't realize it had that much impact on our team members.
Well, I think that one of the things that's really important about that is that that was an unexpected discovery, and it wasn't like scary like some of your management team may have thought. And I think really you were able to identify a perception gap. What they perceived as reality wasn't in fact reality. And so how did you get in front of that with the communications that you guys took as an action step after that?
Yeah, so right when we launched the Thoughtexchange, one of the main aspects was to make sure that the information isn't just gathered in and then, okay, well, we'll work on it and we'll come back with, some of our actions sometime in the next 10 years to explain how smart we are and how we fixed all these problems. It was more of okay, we want to bring all this information in, and then Darby put it right on his heart right from the get-go. I'm going to answer every one of those questions. Now, in the quarterly meeting where we discussed results and where we're going as a future, wasn't the place to answer all of them, but he took the top 5. And you know what? There were some good ones in there. There were some meaty ones in there too. And he answered those questions verbatim. He read the questions out. He said, 57 of you answered that at start that you thought that this was the most important thing. He answered it. And some of it was, there may be a gap in perception. It may be specific to one office, maybe because of some changes that we're going through. But that's okay, because we're still committed to the growth of the entire organization and want to make sure that people feel comfortable that they can talk to us about this. One thing that we did follow up with, and I shouldn't say I take a lot of credit for this, but Darby did a lot of the heavy lifting. He answered every single one of those questions. All 131 questions have an answer to it. There was even one, it's a funny one. One of our leadership team has got this nickname, Chicken. And somebody in our team asked, so who is this Chicken guy? And, he even wrote down, this is who it is, and this is why he has this nickname. And it's something that's been near and dear to him since he was a young boy. Now you know a little bit more about one of your executive. So taking these questions and sharing with people.
Yeah, I love that. So, and you're right, that I think that is so inclusive, and I imagine it had a huge impact on the culture at Allnorth and making these people feel connected to you guys. I think that's such a lovely anecdote, the chicken one, because it can seem like you're disconnected. And so having an opportunity or having a platform that allows for that, I think is really important. One of the things I want to ask you about too, Kris, is that with these 14 different locations that you guys have, how did these kind of frontline managers take this? I know Darby addressed a ton of these at the leadership level, but how did the frontline managers address this with their respective locations? Because I think we both know that a lot of times those frontline managers have sometimes the biggest impact on culture. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure, for sure. So we encouraged after the meeting to make sure that the conversation continued on. We gave a little bit of talking notes as to what kind of results we found. The other thing we did was each one of us from the executive team, we went to a different location, and we're there present. We were making sure that we were sitting with the team. We've got these T-shirts with our logo on and our names across the back, a little bit of a jersey type environment to all be on the same team. And we were all there and making sure that we were engaging with the employees during and then after as well too. But realistically, what we did was making sure that the frontline managers, our division managers, our functional group leads, that they had the ability to answer some of those questions, but they also had the ability to be a little bit vulnerable and say, just tell me more. I want to hear more, positive, negative, and let's feed it in so that we can figure out how to come out the other side and work as a team again.
I think that's great. And you guys have a platform where they can step into that in their own respective locations. So that's really great. One of the things we really always coach our corporate partners on is, utilizing the first Thoughtexchange to help feed what needs to, deeper dives in the following exchanges. And it sounds like you guys are doing that. So that's really lovely. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are ready to, speaking of live exchanges, right? We're ready to do an exchange here in the virtual event. So Amelia's actually going to drop the exchange in the chat. So let's see. Remember, you don't have to sign up to join the exchange. Just click on the privacy and the terms of use, and you can just jump right in. The question in the exchange is, what are the most important thoughts or questions you have for Kris or Angela regarding this leadership discussion? What are the most important thoughts or questions you have for Kris or Angela regarding this leadership discussion? So in order for you to participate in the exchange, I'm going to need to be quiet. It may be a bit awkward for 3 or 4 minutes while there's silence, but just know Kris and I are still here. I want you to be sure you have enough space to participate. So please go in there, share, star, discover, and we'll meet you back here once you're done. So we're going to be quiet now. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you guys so you can see all the ways that you're engaging with each other. I'm still going to go back and be quiet so that you can continue to star, because remember, the starring step is where we really feel like the magic happens, right? This is where you're engaging with other people, you're thinking critically about your priorities, you're building empathy with the other participants. So try to rate between 20 and 30 thoughts if you can. And I'm going to show you how you guys are engaging with one another while we're wrapping this exchange up. I think we're ready to dive into the top thoughts. Kris, are you ready?
I am indeed.
Okay, let's see what we've got. Let me refresh this. All right. Okay. Top thought, 1 out of 23. So what I'd like to do is I'd like for us to kind of go through the top 10 if we can, but if we have more time, we'll just keep going. Does that sound okay with you, Kris?
Beautiful.
Okay, lovely. Kris, you mentioned getting calls warning you about the risks of doing an exchange. Have you had a chance to connect with those people after? And what are some of the comments, observations, reactions? I love this question. Yeah, we never followed up to kind of see how they felt after the exchange was over.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know what, it was actually really powerful is that we were live in, one of us from the leadership team were live in some of the offices where the most apprehension, I guess is the word for having it open. So we were able to be right there and say, so are you upset that we opened this up now after seeing the conversation that we just had and after seeing some commitment that we've just given to addressing some of the questions? And it was resounding, no, I still didn't think it was a very comfortable thing to do, but this is great. I like this. It's super.
That's really good. I'm so glad to hear that. And that was pretty much across the board?
Pretty much across the board. I can think of a couple people who still, you know, when we do this again, like in a month, they're going to say, are you sure? Remember what happened last time? Because it's human nature. We're always going to have some that aren't as comfortable with it. But the answer will be, yeah, we're good. Yep.
Yeah, I love hearing that because I think you're right. For me, courage is kind of like a muscle you have to learn how to flex. Mm-hmm. And the more you do it, the more, the stronger you get at it. And I think that for everyone who starts a process of this kind of courageous feedback, asking these kind of vulnerable questions, the more you flex that muscle, the more courageous I think you'll be.
Good. Okay,
good. What impact has this had on your employees' engagement? Would help to learn about creating a good culture.
Yeah, so 2 things. I'm just about to launch my my twice yearly engagement survey, so I will be able to give more details about that later, and I'd like to follow up with this question to give some facts on it after we have our quantifiable evidence in. Yeah. But my gut is telling me that it's made it better, and the reason my gut feels that way is that with the additional traveling that we're doing to other offices, we are having conversations that I know people weren't comfortable having with me earlier. I visited one of our Saskatoon offices, so one of our larger offices, where I've got a really good relationship with the people there. I helped hire 92% of them, call it. But I had to sit down with one of the team members that was just a real honest to goodness kind of opening of the heart and talking about, you know, this is where I see the economy going. This is where I see, you know, our industry going. We're going down this path. Mm-hmm. It's a little different than our other competitors. Are we really sure this is a good idea? And those are the kind of questions that from that person in particular, I wouldn't have been able to have that conversation with But it was 2 weeks after we did this thought exchange. So I believe it's because of that.
I so appreciate you sharing that, Kris, because I think the flip side of the vulnerability or the courage muscle that it takes to kind of ask these questions, I think it also a lovely byproduct of opening up a conversation in this safe way with Thought Exchange allows for you to even have these conversations kind of offline. You know, it starts to just create this culture that you're looking for, so that you can start diving into those questions or those answers in a face-to-face setting that potentially if you hadn't had this medium to do it, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely. Okay, good. Kris, what are some of the projects you're hoping to accomplish with Thought Exchange in the future? What do you got planned?
That's a great one. So Amy, who I work with on kind of my regular engagement here with Thought Exchange, and I just went through this yesterday. I've got a whole list of things that we're going to be tapping into. Really want to work with our marketing communications team to just think about how do we really expand our internal communications whole philosophy using Thought Exchange. Really just what can't we use it for? I think it could be used for a lot of different aspects there. I think one thing that's quite interesting, one of our lines of business has a lot of workers that come in and go out. We increase our headcount by about 100% in one of our lines of businesses. I'm thinking about how do we throughout one calendar year, how do we use Thought Exchange to engage this group of people across all of our offices that they sit in, and it could just clearly be as, you know, what's important to you. Why did you join Allnorth? What are you looking for a career? Your type of position typically is a call it transient, but more of a, you know, flipping between different employers and following the projects. What can we do to help so that you stay with Allnorth instead of following the projects? So a lot of different ideas there. Really, what I've learned with the tool, more so in this question than any of the others that we've had in the past, is just throw a very simple open-ended question out there. If you do that, you're going to get a lot of data you can then dig into specifically, sit down face-to-face with a person, address by setting a policy or setting a plan, set some training involved by asking those very simple open questions.
That's really great, Kris. I think that there's two things that I really want to highlight there is that like the transient nature of some of your employees and still making them feel engaged in a way that they probably hadn't. I think that that totally aligns with what you were talking about as one of your big goals and Darby's big goals of like really building up a person and investing in their long-term career. I think that all those questions really align with that. The other thing that I really want to double down on too is that you know, the platform does allow for you to make any knowledgeable decision that you need to make within an organization, with any group of people. It allows you to do that. You know, it's not just big, large culture transformation kind of questions. It can be simple decisions that need buy-in from a number of people. This is a great way to do that. So I love that you're thinking about for future uses all of the different use cases.
Yeah, good.
Lovely. Okay, Kris, what is your response to the people concerned with opening themselves to critical feedback? Did they just walk away shaking their heads?
You know, again, I'll use myself as a good example for it. I think that if you show that you yourself are comfortable with opening yourself up and being on the front line and getting ready for, you know, the shots to come at you, you can really gain a lot of credibility with the team members. So my immediate response was, it's okay. There's nothing going to be said here that we won't have an answer to. We don't hide anything here. So it's okay if we get a hard question. That's what my immediate and will continue to be my only response for this kind of question going forward is, because if it wasn't true, we wouldn't be asking these questions. If we did have the type of culture where we hid stuff and there was shady dealings and there were things going on that you're not proud to do and not proud to say, hey, I'm going to put my stamp of approval on it, then I don't think I would actually ask this question in the first place. So for me, the response will always be, we'll be able to handle any question that comes at us. If it's truthful, we'll answer it. If it's not, we'll help to dispel it. And that's it.
That's great. Yeah, getting right in front of it. And I think that also, that messaging really empowers your leadership team too, which is so important in this process.
Absolutely. Yeah. They know that we've got their back because we'll stand in front of everybody for everything. Our leadership team wants to ask a question like this. I got your back. I'm 100% behind you. I will be right behind you on that one.
That's great. Yeah, support and empowerment. That's lovely. So there's a couple in here that seem like we've answered before. Future plans, internal hesitation. I think you've addressed that one. Did the naysayers think after the exchange? You talked about that. What was the most difficult thought to answer? What do you think about that one?
You know, there were, I can remember two in particular, and these two questions actually named specific people and named specific things that happened to specific people.
Mm-hmm.
Tough to answer because there's privacy for a human and for what we want to make sure is their right. And there's also the perception. One of these two questions was about actually 3 or 4 people who had left our organization within a short period of time, and what was the reason? That was a hard question because I want to be upfront and honest and truthful, but there's certain things about a person's decision making that's for them. They may tell me, but they're not about to tell the whole organization. So that was tough. Had to I hate using it, but politically answer that one. And that wasn't, it's not something we're really good at. We're good at telling you exactly what we think and why we did it. And this is what we're going to do, but not skating around things so much that it doesn't make sense at the end.
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that one up too, Kris, because I think hearing that you just took a human approach to that, to the way that you answered that question, like, hey guys, this person left, these, there's some reasonings that I think that we wouldn't want to share with you for, in order to maintain the privacy or integrity of this person. I think one of the things, a byproduct of that kind of messaging is that other people feel when they hear that, great, if I was in that position, this is how the leadership team would still project me, even if I wasn't physically present. And I think that goes a long, long way with your employee base.
I sure hope so.
Yeah. Okay, how do you maintain a culture of continuous learning, empowerment, and recognition? It has to be a sustained effort that hits critical mass and stays there. This is a great question. Talk to us about this constant state of improvement at Allnorth.
Yeah, you know what? We don't. I would love to say we are world-class in this. That's our end goal. That's exactly what we want to get to, is to have to maintain the culture of continuous improvement, empowerment, recognition. We're on our journey there. We've got a lot of different things that we're doing today. We've undertaken a lot of skill building with Lean in order to focus on what continuous improvement looks like, kind of standardizing that. Again, remember my team base is they're engineers, they're technicians, they're technologists, they're people who are very, very good at a very technical type of role. So in order to give them a proper framework to be able to move that forward and then be part of that as a whole team is really important. So yeah, we're on the path for the continuous learning and improvement. The empowerment, that's a tough one as well, because it comes with the learning. It comes with understanding where a person needs a little bit more knowledge, where they need a little bit more confidence, a little bit of I got you. Like, you go ahead, you stick your neck out. I got you. I'll make sure the blade doesn't slam down on it. We're behind you. The recognition, again, we work in a very, very market-driven industry here, where if people aren't building things, they don't need them designed. They don't need them surveyed. They don't need to make sure the concrete's the right elasticity. Our recognition comes in the form of a lot of high fives, a lot of recognizing across the organization. One of our quarterly meeting excerpts that we do is we actually highlight some of the projects and some of the people that are on the projects that we're doing across the organization, and we shut up. We let them talk about it in front of the whole organization, and I think that's a great tool for recognition, is by being able to be proud in front of your peers. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the little things that we do. I think it's a day-to-day thing too, and making sure that our leaders are close to our people, give them opportunity for growth, are constantly searching for growth for our organization as a whole, and then pushing them. What would you like to do? And let me give you the tools to do it.
Yeah, I love that, Kris. I think as you're considering what the future holds for your partnership with Thoughtexchange, I would challenge you almost to put this out to the employees. You know, how can we maintain a culture of continuous learning, empowerment, and recognition? And then you would have a prioritized list of, you know, what was most important to your employee base. So I think that this would be a great exchange question.
Yep, I agree. I'm going to steal that from whoever gave it to me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, kudos to that participant.
I sound like a genius after seeing this one also. Beautiful.
That's great. Yeah, this is how we're tapping into the human intelligence, right? This is the same thing that happens when you do it in your own organization. So why is being vulnerable and asking open questions to people we spend so much time with every day so hard? Gosh, this is a big one.
Super question. I don't have the answer to that. I wish I did, because it is hard. It's you want to think, you feel like you have to have an answer, maybe that's why. Mm-hmm. You feel like you've worked your career to be in a spot where, you know, you're the one who's making decisions on behalf of 400 people, so you've got to have an answer to this. So better not ask, because what if they throw something at you you actually don't know? Maybe we're a little bit afraid of the people that we spend time with every day because we don't know them well enough. Mm-hmm. We think we know them. We kind of gloss over certain things with them, but we don't know them well enough. So we don't want to hurt their feelings with the answer that we come out with.
Yeah.
We don't want to lose respect of others by decisions we make. I think there's probably about 250,000 answers to that question.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think for me, when you're safe and vulnerability, it's because you've created kind of this space of empathy, and really how you do that is a million different ways, right? It's like, it takes time, it takes, safety. How do you create that safety? You give, hopefully you have an opportunity to ask those questions and then respond in a way that people still feel safe. I agree with you, Kris. There's a number of different ways to do this. And I think we're all still trying every day to be able to do it better. Yeah. So how do you bring, I want to end with this question, because this one I really want to dive into. How do you bring executives on who don't seem to think culture is important or needs attention, and how it can be influenced? In some people in leadership feel that they're a victim of the existing culture and have no power to influence it.
That's a good question. There's almost two questions in there. The first question, we don't. If somebody doesn't think culture is important, go find another place to work. Like it's not gonna work here. It's I've been when I came in, it was a time of high growth, and I was doing a lot of recruiting at all levels, and part of my elevator pitch was, this place is not for everybody. This place is for the right type of person who's got an entrepreneurial mind, who wants to make a difference, who wants to work as a team, who wants to, leave their title, their ego, check it at the door. In fact, just, throw it in the shredder, because I don't actually want to see it even when you go home. So first question, we don't, because you either got it or you don't when it comes to understanding that needs of our people is what culture is. Mm-hmm. The second thing about leadership feel that they're a victim of existing culture and have no power to influence it. That's a big one. That really is, because being a victim of a culture, I understand why people might feel that way, but a culture is developed with each individual that's around the table, and that's in the office, and that's in the field. So all I would say is that if somebody ever does feel like that, just ask them, why do you feel like that? Tell me what we're projecting so that we can make sure you don't, and that you have an influence in what the culture is going to, the next corner, the next turn it's going to take.
Yeah, this has been great, Kris. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us. I really appreciate you answering these questions on the fly. It's always lovely to connect with you. I really appreciate you. You're one of, like I said, you're one of our 5-star leaders, and you have such great successes to share, and we can all learn from them. So just as we wrap up, I want to check to see, do you have anything that you'd like to share with the attendees before we wrap things up?
Well, I think there's one last thing I just want to throw out there, is that this kind of stuff it seems daunting to ask these harder questions, but it's really quite easy to ask a question. It's really quite easy to see the responses if you've got the right people on your team, if you've got the right people moving towards the same goal together. So I'll throw a little bit of a plug out there. If you or anybody else you know wants to come and work for a great organization, I know one, and they may be growing. So my details will be on the panel at the end. Make sure you contact me for any reason whatsoever. Want to talk to people who want to grow in a great organization.
Yes. Allnorth is a great organization, so I appreciate that. So I just want to share my screen, guys, really quickly before we wrap up. One of the things that I want to show you is that this is my contact information. If you want to talk to Kris about Allnorth, please reach out to him. If you'd like to talk to me more about Thoughtexchange, please reach out to me. And I can also connect you with Kris. So that's good too. Like I said, Kris, I really appreciate this today. Thank you for sharing everything. And thank you to our attendees again. We'll be sending this out to you in email, so look out for it. Thanks.